What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? This your boy, Matty Flippin' Smokes, coming at you live, but not really live. Wanted to talk front lighting. It's a pretty common tension to think about and deal with of, what's the right approach? What does it need to stay consistent from worship into sermon? If not, what are some good guidelines to go by? And my approach is it's obviously even, but I like to take, let's just go back. So back in the early 1900s, you had, lighting technology at the time was transitioning from fire, literal, lanterns with, oil lanterns, to, different types of technology. Electricity was pretty new, and so there was some theaters that had, electric, arc lamps, lime. Looks like lime phosphorus or something that, when you applied fire to it or whatever, it burned. That's where you get the term limelight. I don't know the science really behind it, but I know lime was involved, and it created this super bright light that they could focus, and that became kind of some of the first spotlights. And that's where we get the term limelight from. But a fella by the name Stanley McCandless, way back in the early 1900s, considered the father of modern lighting. If we can think about early 1900s as modern lighting, but or maybe it's the father of theatrical lighting. I'm not sure, but he's a nod to he's kind of the guy that literally wrote the book on theatrical lighting and kind of some guidelines and processes that we actually use today a fair amount. So, but one of the things that I pull from is the McCandless method when it comes to key light. And so that's 2 point, it's really 3 point lighting, but 2 point on a 45 left and right. And the whole reason for that at the time was, and one side's warm, one side's cool, so you could balance time of day. So it's like the moonlight cool coming in over here, and the sunlight coming in warm over here. And then you could balance the two for noon and all that kind of stuff. But, and then it's 45, left and right, and then 45 degrees up. And the reasoning behind the height of it was, that was the lowest that they could get light that looked natural, but also didn't blind the talent on stage. And that's kind of the guidelines that we use today is, it's like, 45 up, and then you 2 point lighting. And for the most part, I think that is a great place to start. I think 45 degrees in this day and age with cameras and everything like that, I think is a little too steep. So I like to come in like 35, no lower than 35, but between 35 and 40 degrees is a good place to kind of get underneath the eyes. And if you're sticking to that, I think 45 degrees is also too large of an angle, but it works. It works really well. Sometimes you just don't have the space. You can't quite get that distance. So I think 22 and a half or 30 degrees is a good place to kind of land with that. But then I also like to come from two different places, but then I also like to come from the side, and that's where we kind of deviate from the McCandless method. I think there's called the Jewel method, where you're coming from all this, but by and large, 3 point lighting, standard 3 point lighting. One, which is your key, and then you have a fill, and in a lot of ways we use both a key and a fill, but they're both the same intensity to get that nice balance. And then the 3 is like our top, hair light, key, hair light, backlight, rim light, whatever whatever terminology you want to use, but it lights, and what that does is it creates that nice silhouette. It kind of cuts you out of the background, and it looks really nice. But that's a really a great place to start when we're talking about key light. So, but something that is like, what fixtures are we using? And what we're going to use is we have Ayrton Bora TCs. So it has a TC engine, and there's it's got a high CRI. It's like a 90. It's greater than 91 CRI. So what I'm going to do is we have 12 of them that light our stage. And I'm going to go through just some techniques. So if you're at a campus, or if you are, if your church or whatever is using, moving front wash, or you're like trying to play with it, like maybe the worship team is like too bright. It's a big differentiation between like moving from a talking head, or from a worship set into a talking head with the sermon, is if you have the same key light for the sermon as you have for worship, sometimes it's too bright, and you might, all throughout my career, I had gotten feedback of worship feels too bright. It's like, well, yeah, but it looks great on camera. It's like, there's ways to get around, and it's a feeling. It's like, I feel exposed. It's too bright. So there's a way to get vibes and make it feel, look good on camera, but also feel good in the room. That we're going to look at. So, and there's some techniques, and when you have the design sorted out, it really sets you up, gives you the tools to be able to experiment and play and sculpt, your band, and also taking into consideration, where your cameras are. And it opens up that conversation with your video team to say, hey, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? Or are we doing it this way? Are we doing it that way? And I'll get into that a little bit later. But so I have all 12 of our Boras pointed right at me. And so I might actually just for kicks and gigs, I'm curious. Before I hit record, I focused them all on me, and then because I had them soloed and I was bumping through them, and I turned the solo off, and I could feel the heat. I think people think that. People think it's like LED doesn't put out heat. No, it does. It 100% does. It just you get a higher efficiency per watt of lumen output with LED, but still very much gets hot. So when I turned them on, it was like instant heat, and it was so unnecessarily bright that I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like. So for context, I do have them zoomed all the way in, iris all the way open. And if you want to know, this is a Seaconic SpectroMaster C700U meter. And I've got color temperature, I've got foot candle, and then R9 became kind of a topic of discussion. So I have an R9 value there as well. So yeah, we're going to turn everything on, turn everything off, and we're going to go ahead and turn these on. Holy Hannah. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a reading here. And I'm just curious about the foot candles, just to see where we're at. So the R9 value, let's go ahead and turn that down to maybe a reasonable, more reasonable level, just so y'all can kind of see me. But so the R9 value is 33.1, which we didn't buy these for the R9 value, but the the foot candle is 41 or 4,160 foot candles. I believe it. So, anyway, just a fun little exercise there. Let me go ahead and turn this off. But yeah, if you need a meter, don't skimp on the meter here. On any of your metering or measuring devices, it's very important to have what you need. So, anyway, what we're going to dig into is let's go ahead and I see those. So I've got all 12. I just want, holy smokes, it's so hot. It's like physically hot, but also just so bright. Cool. So one of the things would be like have your meat and potatoes. So have your what we do. Let me go with what we do. I have two cues. I have a worship and I have a worship scene, and I have a sermon scene. So worship scene is built off of sermon scene. So something that we did when we, focused our front wash with these lights, is we turned the camera on, set the iris to where we wanted some headroom, but also where we were like, this looks good. We got plenty of headroom if we want to go brighter. We're not choking it. And let's set our lights to that and see what, see where that lands. And that happened to be around the 60-foot candle range, was kind of the best. It looked really nice. And then we just made sure to put all of that in, meter everything, so the whole stage was 60-foot candles. And then we landed on about 40. We were running at like 46 or 4,700 Kelvin for a color temperature. We cooled it down to about 48, 49, somewhere around in there. And then, so that's where we're at. 60-foot candles, 4,800K. And yeah, that's where we landed. So right now, I've got all 12 pointed at me. So for sermon, this is probably going to be something that you're going to want to go for, which is super even. Something that I will do, and this depends on the size of your stage. So take it look at it through the lens of your space. But what I like to do, and what I did with our stage, is just cut it right in half. And we basically stage left, stage right. It's a little bit in thirds because we have our main key, which is the 6 boras on our catwalk. That's doing the heavy lifting, and then we have 2 side boras. So we have these right here, that are doing the kind of the main side light, and then we have. I know you guys can't see where they're at, but these are our main 6 key that's doing the heavy lifting when it comes to lighting the downstage most edge, and keeping all of that. So it's sort of in thirds, but it's really working in half. The outside kind of fixtures are really getting into the pockets. So like the kind of the upstage corner, we got a couple of stairs that come down. They're really kind of filling in there. They're choked quite a bit. But so it's really truly a stage cut in half. And I light one side as even as I can, and I come in and I light the other side. And then it's just a matter of tweaking and torquing on it until you get, it's constantly metering. But this is something that if you're using really any fixture, it doesn't change with an LED source, it doesn't change with a moving discharge lamp, and it definitely doesn't, change with like a conventional, but you really only have, unless you have a, physical mechanical iris or something, you really only have intensity. But what we do is we run our key for worship, and whenever we use key, we run it wide open. So it's at full all the time. So what that means is, okay, I run this at full. Oops. I run this at full. It's like, oh, that's so bright. Well, how do we manage that brightness? Well, I can turn this down, and you can, like, I've got auto white balance, so my camera is going to auto white balance that. But as we move through this spectrum of brightness, that color temperature is shifting. And definitely shifting with a conventional source and even a discharge lamp, because it just does when you start to actually cut that light out. These particularly at the engine, and I don't really understand the mechanics of it, but I just know what the meter says. And so the meter is, reads pretty significant shift in particularly these Boras, and then we were using Vipers previously, and then of course the conventional source naturally it's gonna warm up as you turn the intensity down. So okay, so I can't turn these down, right? I can't just turn these down because it's going to shift my color temperature. So how do we change intensity? So I want to bring these all the way up. And all I'm going to do is iris down and zoom out. So what we've done is we are covering a much wider area, but we also have shapers in these fixtures. Whoa. So I can still shape and shape my light. Wow, these are really sensitive. So I can still shape it, to only cover the area that I want. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the iris, I'm closing it. So in this instance, the actual engine is actually dimming up and down. But with a discharge, that discharge lamp is on, and there's a mechanical, either shutters or it might be a dimmer wheel that's like a graded wheel or whatever. That's actually cutting that light out. What we found is that by doing iris and zoom, because zoom isn't actually, it's just changing, honestly, the brightness more than because it's just, obviously spreading that light beam out farther. Whereas iris would be the thing that I would go, why isn't that shifting color temperature? So I'm not really sure if anybody knows the science behind that. Because that doesn't shift the color temperature at all. And we've metered it, and it doesn't change, but when you change the dimmer, it shifts the color temperature quite a bit. So, so that's something that we do to cut intensity. So in this case, I have way more lights to light this than we need. So I have the iris all the way closed, and I have our zoom all the way wide open. So if you're new to moving, if you're lighting with front light, if you're doing front light with moving lights, and you're like, oh, maybe you got the video people going, color temperature shifting. And you're like, no, same. And this might be a trick that'll help you out. And we've noticed it with so these are an engine with it's a true wash fixture. It's not a bunch of diodes but we have a bunch of R2X washes for front light at campuses and stuff. And those, I would do the same thing to a degree. Some of those are, you can actually just tune, once you get the brightness, then you can actually tune, your color temperature in at that brightness. So it's a little bit more flexible in that case versus this. This is crazy flexible. I'm not saying it's not, but I've had to do that with just can't get there with zooming and moving. And so I actually need to drop and pull out intensity. And then, which means as that intensity comes down, I might need to dial up. And when I say dial up, it might be, 3 or 4% of a red, or pull out a certain amount of blue. It's not 20, 30%. It's a percent or two or 3 or 4. You just kind of got to tune it. You got to tweak it a little bit. So anyway, so that's enough of kind of the technical aspects of that. But how do we get into like kind of the creative side of things? Something that I really, really, really love. This is going to be so bright. Is so I want to turn these off and turn this on. So something that I really love to do. So this is our far house right Bora. So it's coming in basically. So like right here is where. So it's coming in at this, this angle. And so let's talk key and fill. So key is your brightest source. Fill is your second brightest, or it's just something that fills in. This front screen keeps turning off, and I just want to make sure it looks decent. So in this instance, like this is going to be my key, and then if I bring in, this over here, that's going to be my fill. So if I turn this off, I'm pretty shadowed over here. But if I bring this in, kind of evens that out. Now, if I turn this all the way up, now that becomes my key because it's the brightest source. So when you have a design that's set up to do like the angles coming in from this way, and then also if you're able to come in from the side, it creates a lot of possibilities. And particularly for worship. Sermon, you want it to be as even as possible. You want it to be, broadcast quality, even as possible, the best color, the best coverage, the best brightness. It's like optimized, right? But for worship, you can kind of mess around. You can get away with some stuff. So something that I like to do, a nod back to Stanley McCandless of balancing those warms and cools. So we're going to take both of these. So this is at 20% intensity. And I'm going to take this one, and we're just going to go extreme. So that's actually orange. I know it looks kind of red there. And then we're going to take this one over here, and we're going to make it blue. So that's really blue. Yeah, let's maybe like a cyan. There we go. Maybe a little less saturated. So right there, you can create these moods that are like, maybe not this for a full song, but like, it's just giving you an idea of what you could do from a shaping standpoint. So if I want, like, let's say the visuals are like a blue or whatever. So I say, okay, I want, maybe you want them to like kind of blend into that. Maybe you want to saturate it, but maybe you want them to kind of really be contrasted. So maybe you want to stick with this like red, but or this orange, but maybe it's a little too orange. So let's go ahead and kind of desaturate that a little bit, and then we're going to go and set this as our key. So we have a key and a color fill. Now, or you can say, okay, no. I want, let's turn that up to 30%. I want this to be my key, but I just want to fill in, maybe 15%. I just want to fill in here so I don't look completely yellow or completely orange. I've got some natural, light coming in and hitting me so that it feels better, but I'm still getting that contrasted kind of sculpting. So the other thing that, and when I mentioned talking with the video team, is getting them on board and talking about which side do you load, is like which side of the room is more camera loaded. That's a terrible way to put it, but which side of the room has more cameras than one side. So the idea behind that is I always want to shoot into the shadow. So what that means is, if I am lighting from this side, so does it feel like 50? Ooh. Remember, control it this way. Let me actually zoom this in a little bit. Get that, yeah. So so when I say shoot into the shadow, my key is coming from this direction. So I want my camera to come in from this direction, because what that does is it gives this nice silhouette on the on your subject that just looks so good. And like if you're ever out shooting, taking family pictures or whatever, or you're out with friends, you're like, oh, let's take a picture. Most of the time, people just snap a picture, but sometimes if you kind of look around, particularly if the sun is still out, the best picture is going to be the best when the sun is behind you, because you're going to have enough natural light to get your face, but it's gives this nice silhouette, this nice kind of backlight that looks really good. So what I love to do during worship is, our room used to be quite a bit more house left, like heavy with cameras. We'd have maybe 3 cameras over there, two cameras plus we would have like a roamer over there, or whenever we would have a roamer over there. So I didn't really. So I made sure to light from house right, so that way those cameras were shooting into the shadow. It's a fun way to make sure you're kind of covering everything, and it kind of gives you a strategy on how to approach your key light. Again, sermon or your talking head stuff, even Steven, it's got to look the best. But worship, again, you can kind of mess around. There's one other thing that I was going to get to that I don't really remember off the top of my head, but yeah, mess around, play with it. This is what I wanted to do. If you're ever if you're in the market for front wash, you're like, oh, I want, what do I need to look for? What do I need to think about? Well, there's several things to think about. And it's your room, your throw distance, what sort of tools you need to be able to accomplish that. Even light, be able to sculpt, during worship, kind of create these moments. What are the tools that you need in order to do that? Well, brightness is one thing. You don't want to be at the end of your brightness level when you're dealing with key light, because you never know when you need to punch up and you need more. It's really easy to turn it down or create less intensity. So brightness is a factor, but there's also a lot of other things to really think about. The source is important. Thinking about your CRI value, it actually does matter. The R9 value, I think it does matter. I just don't have any evidence to support that, other than numbers and a lot of the industry saying that number makes a difference in the overall product. And in this context, I just don't know where it falls. I would imagine film is more important on that front than this. But our R9 values are okay, and we're super happy with the way these function. But it's something to look at. Look at the CRI value. Look at the R9 value. Look at the type and quality of color that's being produced by that fixture, because it does matter. The quality will be different. The quality will be hopefully better the higher those numbers are. The other thing is zoom and iris, motorized zoom and iris. Those are going to be your two biggest advocates for controlling brightness. The other thing is shapers. It's not super necessary, but it helps a whole lot if you have shapers. So if you can kind of dial those in, the other or think about those as like when you're look at those feature sets. The other thing would be color. So it's color engine. So is it additive or subtractive? If you're getting an LED source like a cob or whatever, it's usually additive, which is going to be as you change, as you go through that spectrum, your brightness might change because it's additive or that kind of stuff. Whereas subtractive, which is color wheels, it's got a white engine. You do color wheels in front of it. So think about that. But also, what color features does it have? Is there a CTO flag? That's super helpful if the engine natively is like 6500K or 8000K or something crazy like that. you're going to want a CTO filter. Not that you're going to run it all the way down to 3200, but you want to be able to shape and pull some of those colors down to warm it up while staying at full. But also color wheel. What's in the color wheel? Does it dual color wheel? Is it just a singular color wheel? And what is in those? Is it just standard colors? But really what I'm looking for is filters. Is there CTB filters? Sometimes there's CTO filters. Sometimes there's CRI filters. Sometimes there's a half minus screen or a minus screen. Those are things to really, really pay attention to, because you might be in a position where you turn your lights on and no matter what you do, everything's just green. And you pull out green and then it turns magenta. Well, so having something like a half minus screen or a minus screen is super helpful. And I'll just show you. So these have a minus screen. Let me show the CTO. So these fixtures are not at full. So let's actually just go ahead and just take them to full. Close my eyes. So bright. And then I'm gonna choke these down a little bit. Close that iris up, and I'm just gonna store that. So what a CTO does. So these, I don't actually remember what these are natively. I think it's like 65 or 7,000 K natively, something like that. And then, so CTO, so as you can see, I'm really orange. But you can kind of add that in. And what that does is when you turn them on and you point them at a person, they're gonna look super blue. And you can white balance that out, but good video starts with great lighting. Or great video starts with great lighting. Anything that you can do on the lighting side of things to make it the best possible, source for that camera to look at, is going to help the overall image. It's going to help the overall product. So this is what we do. What we found in our setup is 25 CTO gives us the color temperature that we're looking for. But you can warm it up more. You can go, okay, that looks, that's 40%. Like that looks more natural. Also my camera's auto white balancing, but it still gets down there in the red. But it's trying to figure it out. But yeah, roundabouts there. So like 40%. I'm just giving you an example of what CTO does. The other thing is going to be your minus filter. So that's the wrong one. Color wheel. Nope. Oh yeah. I haven't been in this because I set the default on these, which I stored. I set the default on these to just have half minus screen on all the time. So I don't remember actually where it's at. Here it is. So this one has a lilac. So it's like a magenta lilac. And then here's the half minus screen, or excuse me, full minus screen. So you're not going to really notice it so much, particularly on this when it's trying to like auto white balance. But it does actually matter on your camera when you're dealing with scopes and you're zoomed in and you got a color card and you're really dialing things in. That minus screen actually matters quite a bit, and it prevents you. What it does is it prevents you from having to pull out. And in this case, you're adding. You're adding something in, or excuse me, you're subtracting. You're adding something in because these are CMY flags. So right now, but I use RGB values. So right now it's wide open, but when I pull out green, it's actually adding in a combination of CMY to kind of. So yeah, if I pull out green, it's magenta. If I pull out blue, it's red. It's really like an orange. Then if I pull out red, it goes away, blackout. But if I add blue back in, it's like that magenta, super blue. But anyway, let's open these back up. So what it does is it prevents you from having to like pull out green, because what you are at risk of doing is going magenta, like going super magenta. So having that, and again, these are just tools. Having that half minus screen or that more minus screen is something to really consider, and then a CTO filter. So those are all of the tools that I would say, if you're in the market for looking for key light, definitely look at that, and go with soft edge. If you can, what I've found is you can get a spot fixture, and let's say you get a spot fixture and you go, no, it's great. It's got a frost filter. I can rack the focus. Yes, you can do that, but it is not going to look nearly as soft as a true wash fixture, a wash source, a soft source. So that would be my only pushback on something to like almost would push it into like a non-negotiable. Is now you got throw distance and things like that. I understand there's extenuating circumstances, but if you can help it, there's plenty of fixtures out there that are kind of bad boy wash fixtures that can get you the throw, that have all of the beam shaping to get, you know, a super long throw with a nice soft edge, a nice soft source. That'll get your stage looking real nice and pretty. But yeah, those are all the tools. Would be, you know, shapers, zoom focus. You know, if you're if you don't have that kind of a budget and you're just like, man, I just need something that is automated and it moves, the R2X wash variable white, it is incredible. And honestly, I would just get the full R2X wash, the full color. They have color temperature presets that are great, and which means you have great white colors that look really nice, that look really good on camera, but then you also have the ability to use color and do some of that shaping that I was talking about in terms of like setting a mood and setting some transitions. Or not transitions, setting some just a different kind of an atmosphere, and that creates just moments, creates moods. The other thing that is like a bonus that these have that I just haven't found in any other wash fixture is these actually have gobos. So this wasn't ever intended to be a commercial for Ayrton, but I really, really, really love the ability to use gobos. Not really focusing them up right now, I think because I have them like all the way zoomed out. But you can kind of, I'll spin them. Oops, rotate. So you can kind of see them moving a little bit. But anyway, there they go. Yeah, so that's kind of the long and short of the front wash side of things. Don't take it too seriously, but take it seriously, if that makes sense. Spend time on it. Get proper scopes, get proper meters, get proper measuring devices, and that's going to help you. I'm not saying you need to go out and buy new lights. Squeeze out every ounce of capability out of, you know, if you got a bunch of par cans or if you got a bunch of, you know, old Lecos or whatever, bench focus them. Make sure that beam is as even as it possibly can be. You know, like you know, excellence in everything. So squeeze out every bit of excellence out of what you have. But you know, when it comes to measuring, don't just use your eyeball, particularly when you're using cameras. You know, get a meter. You don't need to spend, you know, thousands of dollars on one, but get something so you can put some numbers to it, and you can put some hard data to the changes that you're making on stage and what your camera is actually, you know, seeing. It's important. It matters. It does actually matter. So I hope this helps. Should be, you know, front light's something that I love, and it's a time-consuming thing, but it helps with the overall product. So anyway, thanks everybody.